Louise again, and the person I'm going to introduce needs no introduction because she's already given herself an introduction by getting up here before she was scheduled to speak. My friend Pat LeMarche is a fabulous woman. She's been a journalist. She's most recently been on Stephen King's radio station, although now she seems to be traveling the country on no identifiable income. I'm wondering how she's been doing that. She's been a candidate for vice president. She's been a two-time candidate for governor. Her first campaign, she got us back our ballot status when we still needed to. Yep. And the second time was just sort of a fun campaign. Anyway, I'd like to introduce you now to Pat LeMarche.
Somebody said to me one time, what are you running for next? Well, somebody said to me 50,000 times, what are you running for next? I'm never running for anything again, I say. They said, do you hate running for office that much? No, I love running for office. I hate losing. Yeah. What the heck? People don't want to vote for someone who loves them and who would tell them they love them. Hi, I love you. I love you. I want you to love each other.
We love you, Pat.
I'd love it if you loved me back, but you don't even have to. I love you anyway. The more unlovable you are, the more important it is for me to love you. That's our job. That's what we're here for. Somebody told me that's in the next life. Well, you know what? There's too much suffering in this one. So, my kids threatened to have children. And they said, well, if we have children, you'll run for something again. Because you'll say, but I care about other people's children, so they don't have to be that extreme. I was worried that I would be here on time because the dog fell off the roof of the car. Oh, no, that's Mitt Romney. Sorry. What a year, huh? Wasn't 2012 something? I did work on Stephen King's radio station as a political talk host, 4 hours a morning, 5 mornings a week. And Herman Cain, the gift that I really wished would not stop giving. He was such a treat. When Ginger White said that the money was good, the sex was bad, that was possibly the best morning of my life on radio. Thank you for that, yeah. All you tall people. Back in the day I'd have on 12-inch heels and this would have been okay, but I'm kind of dressing green today. I have a really happy announcement to make. I've been at this game ever since John Rensenbrink met with me and my children, and actually my daughter Becky kept a journal of the 1998 campaign for governor, starting with the day that John met all three of us to interview us for running for governor, because, you have to get your family involved. And my hat is off to people like Ann and Tony and others you guys, who have partners. For very obvious reasons, I've been single for a very long time. And I didn't have a partner who could threaten to leave me or hate me or, want me to stop muttering in my sleep or get the fax machine out of the bed, which is where the fax machine was in the 1998 campaign because I had such a tiny apartment. The fax machine was kind of fun, too, if it was about 2 a.m. A little movement. But, if the only people in your life are your children, they kind of don't have a choice when you run for office. So I brought the kids along so that they could be vetted and they could decide whether or not running for governor of the state of Maine was a good idea. And Becky kept a journal, and it's really wonderful. The entries about John Rensenbrink and the time he spent with us were really very important to us. But it's been a long road since 1998. I can't believe that's 15 years. In some ways, it seems like 150 years. It was the year I declared that I was running for governor February 3rd. The election was November 3rd, and my mother died May 12th. And she was the other partner in my family. She was the other parent to my children, and it was devastating. And I look around at green women in this room who helped me take care of my children after my mother died. The campaign was a community. And it was really a wonderful, wonderful thing to have this community that just joined in. And Karen DeAndre, who's not here right now, she would come to my house at the crack of dawn and stay with the kids so I could go to a breakfast meeting in Bangor. She got my kids up. She took them to school. they locked her out of her car. When I said to them, did you ever mind that I called you little brats? They said, no, you said it so nice, we thought it was a compliment. But it was really just something, and that's what's different about green campaigns, is we care about this community, and we are a community when we're doing it. I'm excited about Fred being here. You're Fred, right? The goatee and the cute. Because I'm wanting to watch you raise 2,000 green signatures. I just can't wait to see you do this, because this is so exciting.
I'm not running.
I know, you don't have to. You can just collect them for the person who is. I have some hysterically funny stories about collecting my 2,000 signatures, which was, as I told Fred in a smaller email group, the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, of a commitment. And I'm sure that that Lynn Williams will chime in with that, and how incredibly difficult it is. I have stories that involve shotguns, crazy dogs, naked women. One woman who said, you can come get my... the new green likes the naked people. We went to this one woman, called her up. You get the green list. Hey, can we come get your signature, please? Sure, come on over. But you know what? I've been a nudist since 1985, and when I retired... So that's going to be a sight. And if you don't mind the fact that I have my clothes on, you can come get my signature. Someone else went. I wouldn't have minded, but it was in York County, and I was in Cumberland County at the time. And sure enough, there she was, completely naked and happy as anything to sign our paperwork. She did have her daughter with her, who was clothed, much to the dismay of the young man who went to collect the signature. And she is the woman who goes to the grocery store for her mother. But when you collect green signatures, you got to be prepared to pay for your gas money and get out there and get those signatures. And so what getting green signatures is it's a way to build a party. Because we converted Greens, got them to sign, got them to change their party status and sign. And that is a great way to build a party. And so as far as collecting the signatures, it's brutal, it's unbelievable, it's horrible, but it can be done. Because it can be done, the powers that be don't want it done, and they make it very difficult. And we'll get to that. But all this stuff, and in 2006, we didn't really run for fun. I honest to God wanted to win that race. And who the heck invented Barbara Merrill? And in 2007, Dan Kerrigan, or whatever his name is, lovely man, called me and he said, do you have any regrets from 2006? And I said, I won. And he said, what's that? I said, I wasn't married to Barbara Merrill. Her husband made $186,000 working on that campaign. I have always married the wrong people. I never divorced well either. They always were. Anyway, so marriages, there's another story. Anyway, but through all this time, these 15 years, I have gotten up in the morning and worked to be a faithful Green and love my party, and through loving my party, be a patriot to my country. Want the drones to stop, want the wars to stop, no more arms blown off in my name, please, thank you. Really wanted my environment to know that I love and respect the fact that I exist because of it. Really worked hard, and every day in despair, knowing I was going to be losing at the end of the day. And I want you to tell you that it's my honest opinion, and I never ever lie if I can help it. Occasionally, we all have to, but I want you to know we're not losing anymore. I believe, and there's no Pollyanna here, I think we're catching on. I think the fact that the big guys are bad guys is getting through. And I feel so sorry for loyal Democrats. I don't feel as bad for loyal Republicans because, let's face it, it's not anything but 1863 to them. Hello, he's gone. Even Teddy Roosevelt, out of here. Could we get national parks now? No, obviously not, right? Could we get food stamps passed now? No. anything. Like, could we get the Clean Air Act? No, we couldn't get any of this now. The bad guys are so bad, and their party faithful is so abandoned. And I've felt that way for 15 years, but now, today, being me and having the response I get, and I will tell you how I travel the world on no money, but being me and getting the kind of response I get, what is it that Gandhi said? First they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they fight you. Then you win. And you win. You know what? They don't fight me anymore. And if they make fun of me, they sure as hell will do it to my face. You know, because I'm kind of scrappy. And God love you if you can ignore Pat LeMarche. I really believe politics as activism and activism as politics is the solution. Yeah. And I love Stephen King. I love him for giving me an amplified voice for 15 months. I loved being able to speak for the good guys. Someone called when I said I was leaving that show, and they said Maine is losing its conscience. Well, it was losing the only conscience with a voice, but there's plenty of other conscience out there, and certainly WERU is a great place to spleen vent your conscience, as well as WMPG in Portland and other places. But it really was. Here's a commercial radio station that was, willing to actually have things be said with a power and might of someone like Stephen King behind you. But I really missed being on the ground and touching the souls and the lives of people. And I felt really disconnected from that. And when I said I was leaving, a woman called and she said, how can you say you haven't touched me? You touched me. I'm on Social Security. I have a very fixed income. I'm very cold in my house. You sleep on the lawn to get heating oil. And when I listened to you talking about the wind blowing through the gaps in the shed you were sleeping in on the lawn, I realized I could take all this political mailing I'd been getting and I could stuff it in the cracks around my doors and my windows. And so Obama and Romney insulated her home, unbeknownst to them, because she had stuffed all the crap they'd been mailing to her in the and she said, I'm a lot warmer. I think you've made a big difference in my life. Yeah. So don't even recycle, just reuse. Good stuff. I got to tell you, too, I used to be one of the young people in the party by being 38, right, 15 years ago. Look at you, young people. You're also fun. It's just exciting to see you, It's exciting. My kids registered green when they could register to vote. They've never been a different political party. How exciting is that? The last one of these meetings I was at was in Los Angeles in January. I went to the LA Greens meeting. We're strong. We're happy. We fight amongst each other like families do. But at the end of the day, we know we're all we've got. We need each other. I write for the Huffington Post. I put a post up there about mountaintop removal, where every day I'm surprised by something. And every day that I'm surprised by something, I'm so disappointed in myself because I really think I'm just so incredibly bright. I don't know how I keep not knowing things. It's like, God, I'm so smart. Why am I so stupid? But I went to West Virginia to work on a story about mountaintop removal. And when I got there, I was taken to a roadside that was covered with gravestones. Some of you may have read this story because the story went huge, as big a viral story as I've ever written. And all these gravestones were there that the families could come and collect the gravestones because the explosive detonations were blowing up the graves. So the dearly departed were flying through the air as they did mountaintop removal to get the coal. So, Uncle Fred's wrist bone is in your drinking water, along with all the other effluents and everything else that they've blown into the ravines after they blow them out in smithereens. And it's not as important. Honestly, I really don't think Uncle Fred's wrist bone is that important when compared with the entire mountain. But when you talk about the lack of respect and dignity and the lack of reverence, we did it to the Native American burial sites. Well, guess what? Now all you people who think that your Christian burial grounds are so freaking important, well, they're not important to a bunch of capitalist mother who learn how to do that on the radio. Who absolutely have no other God but the bottom line. And that's their job. Do not be shocked that a corporation does not care about you. Its job is the bottom line. To expect it to do a different job is foolishness, which is why we need a strong government, and I'm really happy all you little socialists decided to use a public library. How absolutely cosmopolitan. Everybody here can get a book? Oh my God! Radical. I just think we need to say to people, it's not a surprise that they don't care about you. That's why we need each other, and we need a good, strong government to control them. To control them, not to control you. Not to, thank God for my uterus. It's the only thing that really is a political difference anymore. And I'm telling you what, that's a sorry state of affairs. But the uterus that's now the difference between the two parties. Right down to the fact that if there isn't at least one uterus in a relationship, the relationship doesn't matter, right? It can't have more than one uterus, but it has to have at least one uterus, right? It's all about the uterus. And that's the difference between these two political parties. My God, we're important. At long last. So get me started on the fallopian tubes. We're not even supposed to talk about those body parts either. I think that's why they're tucked inside. Everything that flops in the breeze is fair game, but it's in the background. Okay, so what have I been doing? I've been doing this activism as politics, politics as activism. I went on a tour that relived the Jode trip. Now, yes, I know they're fiction. But the Grapes of Wrath and John Steinbeck wrote about the Jode family, who was just a representation of so many families in the 1930s, and the 2013s. So many families displaced by lack of work and by a lack of resources and by their vanishing, their farming wrong because of the industrial farms, and so their soil's going away and the Dust Bowl and blah, 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 the story. So Diane Nyland, a very good friend of mine and a national advocate for homeless children, we traveled across the country and retraced the steps the best we could that the Jodes took. I flew into Little Rock, Arkansas. We went to the Clinton Library. That's a hoot. There's a replica of the White House Oval Office there. And so I asked the security guard if my friends could take my picture of me kneeling down behind the desk. I said, oh, please, they'll just take a minute. Here I have my beret. They won't let me. It's just no fun in politics like it should be. It's a dandy desk. Not that there's anything wrong with that, by the way. Anyway, all that stuff gives people a bad name. And it shouldn't. But anyway, so we went west from there, and we called ourselves the Babes of Wrath. And, there's a lot of wrath if you're talking about homelessness. And we wanted to get the word out that, what homeless people really need, homes. It's about that complicated, and we got all the way to LA, and the Young Turks called us. I don't know if you've seen that program, but the Young Turks called us, and they had us on, and it was really exciting. And by the first news story, Flagstaff, Arizona, I did get to interview Sheriff Joe Arpaio, which was a treat, America's sheriff, Yeah, it was a hoot. And all this stuff is at my Facebook page, which friend me, we're all friends already, but if we're not physically friends on Facebook, please do so. You can see the pictures. You can read the transcript of the Joe Arpaio interview. Also, Epic Journey 10 on Facebook. Diane and I have done a couple of these trips, and we named them Epic Journeys for everyday people in crisis. The first one we did the Southeast, and we called it the Southern Discomfort Tour. Well, I really believe if you don't laugh, you're going to cry, right? And I think we need to have some fun. And if Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert are teaching us anything, it's that, make fun of these guys who are destroying our world, because they're the ones who deserve ridicule. So we get out, Flagstaff, then we get to all these interviews, and people are writing stories about us, calling themselves the Babes of Wrath. But when we got to the Young Turk show, they just said, and here are the Babes of Wrath. Like it was real, which was just spectacular. So then we came all the way back, and we ended up in South Carolina because we wanted to end with a happy ending. And when you're talking about 5 or 6 million homeless people, those aren't that easy to find. And when we got to South Carolina, we interviewed a man who was a social worker who had worked with the homeless for 25 years. And he realized that what they really needed was a lawyer, and not a lawyer who donated as much time as they could, like Lynn Williams, but someone who was dedicated to them because, stuff falls through the cracks when you're doing it in your spare time. And he went to law school, and he became a lawyer, and he went right back to the homeless shelter. And he practices law in a homeless shelter, and all of his clients are homeless. And this is a hero. This is a hero. And I think every law school in this country should have one chair for the person who wants to go right back and do poverty. And one chair every year for that. And I've tried to, I'm back in Pennsylvania for now, and I went to try and sit in the president's office at Penn State. That's not that easy anymore because of all that nastiness that happens in showers at Penn State. But, they're all dropping and covering, and I think that this would be a great thing for them to do to reclaim some of their dignity. But every single law school should have one person, and these people will have to take a vow of poverty because when they go back to working with the homeless, they're not going to make money as lawyers. So it's really important that the law schools make their investment in these people because they can't afford to pay the loans to be lawyers. But anyway, so that was a really great opportunity for me. I'm working on a second book. I wrote a book when I ran for vice president. I lived in homeless shelters around the country and wrote a book about it. That's now an e-book. So, you don't have to buy the physical copy if you don't want. You can just go get it for your Kindle or whatever. But I'm writing a new book on this. But in the meantime, this is my upcoming thing that I think is exciting. And this is why I know we're making it. First of all, when people write a press release about me now, it always says Green Party vice presidential candidate. It always says it. Yay! It isn't the dirty little secret that is swept underneath the carpet. It's a point of pride for the people who get to work with us, that a Green Party vice presidential candidate cares about their issue. And I'll tell you, when I was living in those shelters running for Green Party vice, half the reason I couldn't get into most of them was because they didn't want to politicize it. Now they'll join hands with us because they know we're the ones who care. And I think that's a really profound thing. So I got a phone call a couple of weeks ago, and I have taken a job that I really haven't announced to anywhere yet, but there are 6 radio stations in central Pennsylvania that air a radio program that's been on for 8 years, and it's just progressive talk radio. It's the truth, and it's a place to find the truth. And I'm going to join that show, and I don't know how long I'll join the show for because I don't like having my shoes nailed too firmly down in the ground. But it's a really great opportunity. And if somebody, it's in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Allentown, Harrisburg, Shippensburg, probably an area of 6 million, 7 million people that will be able to hear this show and have been able to hear this show. They're trying to get into Philly, they're trying to get into Baltimore, they're trying to get into Pittsburgh. I would love to get it into Bucksport. I would love to get it on ERU. Whoever picks it up can have it. So if you want to talk to, or MPG, if you want to talk to them, it's 3 hours of programming a day, and it's going to be political talk, and it's going to be the truth. And it's clear, honest truth for the heartless bastards and what they're actually doing. The truth about the sequester. Oh my God, are you kidding me? Because a senator flies, all of a sudden the problem created by the sequester is solved in 15 seconds. Okay, I have long said this, and I still want it to happen. I want a random number of senators and representatives drawn out of a hat and losing their health care. The exact statistical number that don't have it in the country. No, I want them to play Senator Roulette like the rest of us play. I want them to play lifestyle roulette. I want the same number homeless, and then they can live 30 years less. A chronically homeless person has a life expectancy of 47. I want them, and then if they don't want to be the 1 or the 5 or the 13 that ends up being these guys, they can close the gap. And one by one, they'll get their health insurance back, or their housing back, or whatever it is they're going to lose. Oh my God, Jill, that's in the house. And I want that same fear. There are three experiences that the homeless have, in my opinion. 3 emotions: humiliation, horrid humiliation. That's really a good control mechanism. Who's going to own up to it? Who's going to say, you can drop me off at this corner, I live in that house, when I actually have to walk to the shelter, or walk to the park, or walk to the woods where they've hidden their stuff? Fear. Real fear. Okay, come forward, I'm going to help you. Are you kidding me? Well, how did I get here? What part of helping me got me here? And then the last one's anger. And who do they take their anger out on? Themselves. Their children. And then we want to know why they're so mean to their kids. Well, because we're mean to them. And if they're mean back to us, we'll lock them up. Unless we can't wait that long, and then we'll just lock them up on Skid Row like they do right now for sitting on the sidewalk. I was in Skid Row a couple of months ago. I met Nathaniel Ayers. I don't know if anyone saw the movie The Soloist, where Nathaniel Ayers meets Steve Lopez, the LA Times reporter. The LA Times reporter does a story about him. I think he's played by Robert Downey Jr. And he sees this Juilliard-trained kid living on Skid Row. And I want you to know, if you saw the end of the movie where everything's wonderful, Nathaniel Ayers still lives on Skid Row. However, he uses a different name now, because he's Nathaniel Ayers. That's what good fame did for him. It is now Tony Ocean. He's still schizophrenic. He still has a lot of issues. He does have a single-room occupancy on Skid Row. Skid Row, where 40,000 people live in 10,000 housing units. So the other 30,000 live on the street, and it's now against the law to sit on the sidewalk. I interviewed one man who had been arrested 12 times since the law was passed. They've hired 50 new police people to patrol Skid Row. If it wasn't so crazy, it'd be funny. Who's the crazy one? Certainly not Nathaniel Ayers, who's still just playing the trumpet and the cello and trying to have a decent day. You know why he loves Skid Row so much? There's a symphony there. There's a symphony of musicians, and they play in a symphony. You got to go to Skid Row. You've got to. We've all got to. And if you can't, then go to the Huffington Post and just. I write as much as I can, and I wrote 17 stories from the road when I did this last trip. Also, Nuclear Vision, which sounds like nuclear fission on purpose. Nuclear Vision is a magazine out of Prescott, Arizona. I am the only non-PhD that writes for them, and it shows. It's a bunch of college smart people, and they write stories for the chronically farsighted. And you can read stuff that's really uplifting, but so I wrote about, half of the stories for them, the other half for the Huffington, a couple for Alternate, who I now write for Alternate too. And I also write for a newspaper in a little place in Harrisburg, and that's the best money, which is just crazy because it's still in print. And heaven forbid we still have a local newspaper. It's amazing that we can't get any kind of coverage anymore, except the propaganda. Of course, what happened in Boston is terrorism, but not what happened in Newtown, Connecticut. All the language that's being used is being used against us by the headline writers and the middle managers who are told what to do and what to say because we don't have any journalists on the ground anymore. And I've been working on one story about family planning in the central Pennsylvania area, and I've been working on it for about 4 weeks. If I wasn't a stringer, someone who just works and sells the story, I would never be able to write that story because I'd have to write 5 other stories and I'm done that day, right? So that's why we don't have investigative journalism. As for how I live, I'm an agnostic, but I'll tell you, I'm the lily of the field. People don't let things happen to me. good people give me a place to stay, and they feed me well, obviously. They take care of me. They shuttle me around the country, and they give me an opportunity to do this because they believe in us. And I love Lynn Williams so much, and she said that I gave you guys back ballot status. But you know what? You gave you back ballot status. I was a hub and a wheel with so many spokes, and 37,000 some odd people gave us back ballot status when they cast their vote for me. Yeah. We did. And I always have been in love with those people. Those are the people who get up. It was a very rainy day. Get up on a very rainy day and slog their way to the election polls to vote for someone they knew would lose. But they did it anyway. That's what the Democrats and the Republicans don't understand.
That's what they're afraid of.
Well, and they say that the votes are stolen, but you know what? You don't get out in the rain and vote for someone you think will lose unless you really believe in them, and that is not a vote anybody else could have.
Yeah.
You know? You'd like to have my votes. You'd like to. You ain't getting them. So part of this new gig I'm doing, and you will be able to hear it online, so you'll be able to listen live online. It's 9 p.m. to midnight, which makes me so excited. That 4 a.m. stuff got old really quick. It's also podcasted. It's aired the next day in a couple of those cities at noon, which is obviously a much better time. So while I will be broadcasting live at 9 in Scranton and Wilkes-Barre and some of those cities, they play it the next day on some of these talk radio shows at noon, on these stations, noon to 3. The other thing that's interesting is these are all commercial stations, and the other lineup on those stations are the Rush Limbaughs and the Hannitys and stuff, so it's kind of remarkable that this show's on at all. It ought to be funny. I'm hoping it's going to be funny, because right now it's really cutting edge and it's really brutal and it's really a lot of fabulous anger. But, we got to cut that anger with some humor, because people turn us off if they think that we're just, realistic. If you ain't pissed, you ain't realistic. But all that pissed-offness is not helpful. And part of this thing is I leave again. We're broadcasting for 2 days from New York City at the beginning of June. And then June 8th, I leave again to travel the country. But this time we're writing the history of the labor movement. This country was not built by the robber barons. This country was built by the immigrants that the xenophobes like to revile. This country was built by the Chinese and the Irish and the Germans and the poor huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And they came here and we used them. And we built an infrastructure. And we will be traveling. I am delighted to tell you we will be interviewing Strippers Local 519 in Reno. Hoping to pick up a few pointers. Or share a couple. We are also doing the Elevator Union in Roswell, New Mexico. Nice. Can't wait to see where the elevator goes. I just have this whole Men in Black scene just plays out in my head. But we are going to, obviously, the postal workers, the much maligned postal employees who, George Will thinks that Walmart would be the perfect place to get your mail.
Everything that's fat with cash must be privatized. Everything that's bloated with dollar bills coming out its ears must be privatized. That's the goal of these guys. That post office is so fat with cash that Susan Collins, bless her little heart, had to make it look broke. And the only way to do that was to sequester 75 years of retirement, make sure the retirement for the kids who aren't even born yet, to carry your letters that we can't even get. And the poor slob at home who has
like a kid with a lump in his armpit and he can't afford to take him to the doctor and he's got crap dinner again for the fourth night, although I happen to love that stuff. And you know, he's working 3 minimum wage jobs, every one of them 28 hours a week, so that there's no benefit and Obamacare doesn't kick in, and we're not even going to get going on that. And all of that necessary to bamboozle the people of the United States, to make them believe that the post office can't do anything right. I live in Ben Franklin State right now, and I know one thing, that ground's shaky. It's Ben's pissed off, well, that fracking is really a bad thing, and I'm thinking it might be a little of both. You know, that's one of the things we're going to start doing for the show. We're going to have liners by Ben Franklin. So if anyone wants to play Ben, let me know. But, you know, Ben Franklin, are you kidding me? He invented the post office. And these Republicans, and Lieberman, whatever he is, he's some sort of a hybrid between a reptile, I hate to insult them, and I don't know what, you know? UFO. No, Roswell. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the labor movement. We're going to talk about the jobs that are you really angry at someone who wants to make $30 an hour? Oh, and by the way, they want you to make it too. You know, we have a middle class that could be built out of this service industries in this country, and that's what we need to do. The new middle class is the service industries, the power retailers, and the fast food organizations. If one more person smiles at me at a McDonald's, I'm just going to punch her in the face. I say, are you kidding me? For $7 1/4, I want you to bitch at me. Yeah. I get a cup of coffee, and you're pleasant? I don't think so. I don't deserve that. I'm too busy saving a penny. Really. We need to let this love we feel for each other just overflow. Overflow. One more person talks to me about kids nowadays. What are you talking about? I love them. You know, I even think I'd like them educated. Wow. You know, one of my favorite people is Cynthia McKinney says, only a heartless country would put a banker between a child and an education. Yeah. You know, thank you, George W. Bush. Anyway, I have no idea what time it is. What time is it?
12:40.
30. Okay, so I'm out of time, which means I'll speak very quickly because I'm never out of time. Back in the day, when Pat LeMarche ran for governor of the state of Maine for the second time, with every intention of winning, by the way, so I'm sorry about that, we had the LeMarche healthcare plan, which I wrote in '98 with the unknown help of Neil Rold, who actually did all the work for the Healthcare Commission report that those guys wrote back in the day. Back when we had a public option, you know there used to be a public option. And then they took it away from us in the late 90s, and nobody reminded anybody of that because there isn't a press anymore. But we had scrubs instead of T-shirts because healthcare was such an important part. We wanted to be the Saskatchewan of the United States. Saskatchewan, the first province to have universal healthcare. And then, you know, so many jobs went to Saskatchewan, the rest of the country got it so that they could take their jobs back. So we thought, you know, Maine could be the beginning, and, you know, once we have universal health care here, manufacturers want to come here to save their health expenses. It was brilliant, I agree. But anyway, we have 2 shirts left, and we all love the Maine Green Party, and the Maine Green Party needs cash. And so I think we should do something. Jackie asked me to raffle them, to auction them. And so I'll auction one, but I would like to raffle the other one, because I think it's far more socialist to give everybody a chance to win, rather than somebody who just has a deeper pocket, right? So let's do dollar raffle tickets on the one, and you can buy 20 of them if you want. But then the other one we'll auction, and maybe we'll just make it a silent auction or do you guys want to start yelling numbers out? No. Okay. Let's do a silent auction. We'll put that up back, but we'll also do a raffle of the second shirt. And, I just love you, and I'm grateful that you had me here today. And I look forward to everything you're all going to do, because together, we're gonna keep being respected. And we are at that point now. We're respected as an organization. And that means we have Bob Klotz and others that want to be a new member. Thank you.